Hi, everybody. This is John Lacey. We recently had a question from Bernhard about using multicam in OBS. So I wanted to unpack this a little bit. Obviously, today will be a bit of a behind the scenes thing. So it's not going to look particularly pretty, but I just want to unpack some of the concepts. So here in OBS Studio, I'm starting with a new scene collection. And what we can do is let's go in and add a new scene. Actually, we can let's rename this existing one. So we'll just rename this one, and we'll say this is. I'll right click and go camera one. And in our sources, let's go to our add sign and our plus sign there, and let's find our video capture device. I'm going to be using the Sony for this one. And again, this comes in via a cam link, so it's for all intents and purposes, it's basically just a webcam. So again, there I am. You can see me. You can also see a lot of the stuff behind me that's usually obscured with the green screen magic, but I'm not going to worry about that too much today. So we've got our camera here. I guess the first thing to think about, and as a bit of background, I understand that Bernhard's recording two people on two different web cameras and two different microphones. So the important thing really is just to make sure that you think a little bit about your sound options here. So in terms of our, let me just see if I can find that setting. So I've got that coming in here. Okay. So I guess my feeling is, and you probably have a look at this and go to properties. These are cam links. Capture audio only. Okay, so down the bottom here, we actually have this use custom audio device. So you actually have a few options on how you can work with video and audio within OBS Studio. So I have two options. I can either just leave this by default, and it's actually capturing the audio probably from, I'm assuming from my cam link. But I can also go in and specify, as in fact, in this case, it seems to, yeah. Okay, and I can go in and specify an audio source there as well. But I think for today's purposes, what I'll do, I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm going to come in and mute the microphone here. And I'm actually going to add in a separate audio source. So an audio input capture. And we will call this, I'll just call it Rode. I'm just going to come in from my default device, which is the Rodecaster. And we want the stereo version thereof. So I guess, hopefully this will become more apparent in a second. But the other thing I want to do is I'm going to add in some text. And I'm just going to call this one Cam1 text. And we'll call this Camera 1. It's probably huge, but that's okay. I can live with that. This is really only for demonstration purposes. So, I can come in, I'll mute the audio on, actually, no, I've already done that down here. So that's fine. So I've got my first camera and my audio source. Let's come in and add in a second scene, and we'll call this camera 2. And again, I'm going to grab a different webcam in this case. So I'm going to go to video capture device. And this one is a Logitech, so we'll just call it that. And I'll just find that from the options that I have here. That one there, I believe. Yep. Okay, so again, this is just me at a different angle because I'm the only one here. And again, we can capture we can use a different audio device if we want as well. So, and you'll see here, like I'll come into my properties because I just want to make sure that the resolution is custom. And I want 1920 by 1080. Okay, cool. So that'll fill my frame. And again, I can come in and I can add in an audio source. In this case, I probably don't want to do that just because I'm using the same audio source for both of these. So that is the one thing that you will need to be careful about. But again, let's add some text in. We'll call this camera 2 text. And I'll say camera 2. I don't really remember if that's how I did it over there. So essentially now we've got camera 1, we've got camera 2. So 2 different angles of the same thing, but this could be 2 different guests. Okay, let's actually create a scene where we combine these 2 things. So let's go, I'll call it 2 cameras. Again, like whatever makes sense to you, it doesn't really matter too much. So now I've got my scene with 2 cameras, and I'm going to come in here, and instead of adding an individual source, I'm going to actually add the existing scenes that we've already set up. So if we go to the add scene option, and I can go to add existing, and we'll bring in camera 1. And what I'll do is I will just, I'll resize this a little bit. And we'll bring in the other scene. Camera 2. And, you know, maybe I want them side by side. So essentially I can throw to camera 1, I can throw to camera 2. Again, just think a little bit about your audio sources. So whether they're coming in as individual USB microphones, or as the stereo track. I know Bernhard's using the Rode software, so that may be just a single stereo track, in which case just make sure it's present in each of the scenes. And then we have the 2 together. So that in itself is reasonably straightforward. Of course, there's no reason why we can't duplicate this scene. So if I right click and go duplicate, and we'll call this one picture in picture. And, you know, in this case, we might want to make camera 1 fill the space. And I might want to move camera 2 down here. You know, we can resize it, we can crop it, whatever we need to do. And again, if you want to crop it, you can hold down the Alt key and drag in. So we have that there as well. So I think that one of the other questions that Bernhard had was about recording these things separately. So obviously, if you want to record everything that's happening in OBS Studio, you can just hit the start recording button. But what I would recommend, if you want to capture these individually, and you can either do this on the camera itself, assuming the audio is connected to that, or you can do it on the scene. So let's do it on the scene in this case, because the audio is treated a little bit differently. Let's right click, and if we go to filters, this is actually a special plugin you will need to install. So I'll include a link to this, but essentially we have this thing called source record. So we can go in and add that in. And you can sort of decide the record mode. So whether it's always recording, I probably wouldn't recommend that because it can be a little intensive. But if we say, if we're just recording, I want you to record a version of this video. It's got a file name formatting option. I'd probably come in here and go camera 1, just to make sure that that's unique. You can think about where you want to include that as well. The format, so MKV is probably a good one to keep it on, because that, if your computer crashes, there's a good chance you'll be able to get some of that video recording back, whereas you may not be able to do that in MP4. But if you do it in MKV, you've got to change the format essentially, which they call remuxing, which isn't difficult, but you know it's potentially an extra step. So now, if we go to we can check our settings. You could specify the audio. Again, we're actually capturing the entire scene, and the audio should be in there as well. So that's absolutely fine. And we'll go close. And we can do a similar thing for camera 2. And I'm going to go to source record as well. And again, make sure that the file names are different, because there is a small risk that you could override them if they're exactly the same. Okay. So anyway, we've got that there. So now what happens is if we're recording and I'm, I hit the start recording button, I'm talking away, everything is great. I can hit stop recording, and we should actually see that that recording is actually, I probably should have planned this out a little bit more, but that's fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just on another screen, there's a good chance, and if we go to Remux recordings, see if I can find this file that we just had. Okay, so I might have done something wrong because I only got one of those two cameras. So let me just double check those settings again. So if we go into filters, okay, so I haven't put record mode on. So we want to have it when it's recording. So let's do that again. So we can go, we've got our two cameras here. I can hit start recording. I can say whatever it is that I need to say. We can stop recording. In this case, it's actually remuxing the main recording at there. But if I go and find the other ones, you'll see that it's actually recorded. It's recorded the two together, but it's also recorded these two separately. So again, I can actually bring them in here and I can remux. I'm not sure if I can do that actually, but let's try it. Yes, you can. So if I hit remux, it'll turn these into MP4s. You can actually, okay, in this case, we might want to rename this one and we'll just say together. But essentially, once we've done that, I've got the scene of the two views together. I've got an individual scene and I've got the other angle. So again, it's not massively difficult to do. Once you've actually got your picture in picture, you can rearrange this however you like, and you can create your own graphics and custom backgrounds and do the green screen stuff that I'm not actually doing today. But you've got that there. So I guess the other thing too is if you go to the settings, so go to File Settings, we have hotkeys. And what you can do is you can actually come in and, this should, in fact, you'll see that these scenes, so switch to scene, you can create a new shortcut for this one. So maybe if I want to go Control-Shift-Q for camera 1, Control-Shift-W for camera 2, maybe Control-Shift-E for picture-in-picture. So there are those two options there. So you can certainly do that with a keyboard. Of course, the other really fun thing to do if you have a Stream Deck is you can set up some buttons over there. Let me just bring that up. So again, I'm going to create a new page just for this demonstration. And if you've got and I know that Bernhard mentioned that he's used to doing this with physical technology from in a previous previous job. So it's really easy to do this. If we go to the OBS Studio options in our Stream Deck app, we can actually find our scenes. So here we can just wait for it to catch up. So essentially we've got the two cameras, and I'll say two cameras. And we can do that again. And I can say, we'll call this pip for the picture in picture. You can also set up a record button. So that's a really handy thing to do as well. So now if I, instead of using my mouse or my keyboard, I mean, if you do just want to use your mouse, you can just click on these things and they'll pop up. But alternatively, I'm currently on the two cameras. I can hit a button on the Stream Deck and it'll move over to the picture in picture. I can easily press it to go back. So that's the basics of it. I hope that makes sense. If you've got any further questions, please let me know and I'll talk about that at a future date. I know this has been a little bit improvised, but I hope it's been useful. So thank you.